Hello and welcome to another episode of the ORG podcast. This is, I believe, episode number 6, where we talk with Priscilla Mier of JBC and Company. I have been looking forward to this interview for a while. It's been a long time coming, and we're finally getting it done. And we've done it. I like it so much we're doing it twice. Y'all don't know this. We've already done this once. This is our second recording. So if we reference the first recording, then you'll know what we're talking about. There was a terrible echo in there, so we're re-recording this, but I don't mind. Anyway, I want to say this: we are the ORG, the Orthodontic Resource Group, and this is our way of communicating with the industry, communicating with people like Priscilla, who's been in the laboratory industry and is now a manufacturer of our industry, and we are a nonprofit association of laboratory owners and manufacturers and dental offices around the country. And our motto, you can say, is facilitating learning and growth through educational and collaboration with professionals in the orthodontic industry. And as you can see, if you go to membership directory, you can see a map of all of the members. We are all over the United States, all over the world. And you can see, if you just hover over one of these, you can see our members that are members here. So I also want to announce we do have a meeting coming up. We want you to save the date, April 5th and 6th, 2024. Again, it's going to be in Irving again, but we're going to be one block down at a different hotel that's bigger. We outgrew our last one. And so we are going to be at a new location called the Westin. So save the date. We'd love to see you all there. As you can see, we had a big turnout last time at our conference. These are all the members there, and you may actually see yourself in there. So without further ado, before I forget, these t-shirts are going on sale soon. If you came to the conference, as you can see, everybody in the picture before was wearing this t-shirt. You got a t-shirt with your registration. But we do have some extra ones. If you do want to buy one, an extra one, you want one, it's got all of our lab names on the back. So all the member labs as of March 2023 are on the back. So your lab name may be on there. But I'll send an announcement on Facebook when I get that store launched. And we do have some t-shirts left, so you can order your t-shirts there. Checking my notes. Okay, I covered everything. Let's get Priscilla on here. Priscilla, how you doing?
Hey, good.
We are again, like I said, this is our second time to record this, so this is fun for us to reminisce again. We're obviously in Texas, and we are having a wonderful heat storm outside. Heat wave. But what I usually do is I start with everybody. Let's start from the beginning. And how did you get into the ortho lab industry? I believe you started as an ortho assistant.
A dental assistant, got out of high school, went to dental assisting school, got my credential there. My first paying job was in an orthodontic office and worked there 2.5 years. And I really enjoyed it. This was a time before four-handed dentistry and before RDAs were licensed in all the states or many of the states. So the doctor I worked for taught me how to do stuff in the mouth, remove arched wires, ligate, and then he even offered to teach me how to do a diagnosis of a case. He'd bring me in his office and ask me to look at the cephalometrics and the study models and give my opinion on what would be his plan of attack for treating that malocclusion. So that was great experience.
Yeah, you don't see that much anymore.
No, and the Dr. Yargates was an ex-military dentist, and then he went into orthodontia, and he provided me with all his books
Oh,
And he
wow.
said, whatever you want to learn is in the books in my office. You can use them, look at them, keep them on property. So when he wasn't at the office, then that's exactly what I did. I just brushed up and learned as much as I could about malocclusions, facial deformities, congenital irregularities, all of that stuff. So
You just soaked all this up.
I
So,
did. I did.
yeah.
I really did.
Well, that made you
And
an awesome assistant then. You could kind of start predicting as cases came in, as patients came in.
yes, and I wasn't afraid to do anything. And we were very, very busy. His practice worked 2 full days a week and 2 half days. And on those full days, we saw 50 or more patients before lunchtime and 50 patients after lunchtime between he and I.
Just you and him.
Yes.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
when we would get bogged up in the waiting room, I would tell him, whisper in his ear and say, I could do that. Meaning I can remove the arch wire, let me clip out the ligatures, remove it, and you go to another patient, diagnose what you're going to do for that appointment, and then come back here. So we would do that. He allowed me to do a lot of that. Then he started allowing me to ligate the arch wires in place. And this was before the elastics were even,
Those
they were
little
just
wires that you had spin, twist
right.
down.
Right. So that allowed him to see patients in a more on time schedule. And I was very interested in the appliances, the retainers. And at the time, my husband and I he was going to school and he was also working for his parents, who had a very large study model laboratory in the Southern California market.
Whoa.
So So John worked as a courier for his parents, picking up and delivering study models. And orthodontic doctors were asking him, hey, why don't you open up an appliance lab? So that was the beginning of laboratory work. So we were young, we didn't know. And with my ortho knowledge and our fortitude, we just opened up a lab, and he went around and solicited some of those orthodontists, and they said, sure, we'll send you some work. So we cut our teeth on those doctors. They taught us how they wanted their work done. I primarily was the wire bender and the acrylicer, and we just learned over the next 38 years how to do stuff, make appliances based on my knowledge of orthodontia and how appliances should work. And
Well,
that's how we grew the lab.
and I bet that experience as an ortho assistant where you were preparing things for the next step, you were getting ready for a doctor, and coordinating the treatment coordinator, that probably transferred into the lab as, I need to get this wire done so this can be done. Just a coordination of the process probably helped a lot.
Yeah, the workflow. I mean,
Workflow. That's the word I was trying to
yeah,
say.
yeah. And the the doctor I worked for, he had two girls, separate laboratories, that he was funneling lab work to them. And when I showed an interest, then he started having me make his work. But I had those other labs as examples to
Mm.
follow. And one gal's work was beautiful. Everything looked like a piece of art. And the other one, not so. The wires weren't symmetric. Um, there were just two different qualities of lab work. So I aspired to the more perfect. And I always kept that as my quality control. Every retainer, appliance, bionator, lingual arch, RPE was going to leave my laboratory looking like a piece of art work as well as a functional appliance.
Well,
And
you're probably glad you got to see the yin yang of that, the good, the bad, and you were like, you got to decide. Oh, I can, because I saw the bad or the not so good. It made this other one stand out, so I want my appliances to stand out like this one does.
yes, exactly. Exactly.
And Norm McMillan was my lab, and you got to bring him to the conference one year, which was great
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the doctor, whenever I started my interest in the ortho lab when I was an ortho assistant, he'd bring one of Norm McMillan's spring aligners to me and go, "This is what you need to strive for," and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And as I was going through lab school, the doctor said, "I can see your quality of appliances getting better." But that's funny that you got to see the good and the bad, and you decided we're going to be the good. We're going to be excellent in our
Yeah.
work.
And if you're an established laboratory, you get to see all the work on occasion from the other laboratories in your vicinity,
Hmm.
because at one point in time your current clients will send you a repair from another laboratory.
Right, and you're like,
And
"That's not mine."
yeah, and that is very true. And I incorporated signature wire bending techniques into all my lab work, and had all my technicians do the same thing. So there would be no point in time in the future that I would have to stand there and go, well, I don't think that's mine. Yes,
Right,
it's mine, or no, it's not my work. But you always have comparisons of other people's lab work when it comes through your lab to be repaired or replaced. So that was always a barometer of, we got to do better. Our work can't look like this when it goes to another lab
hmm
to be
and
repaired.
I think I learned that from you, from myself. I'd put little teardrops at the ends of my wires, and I don't think anybody else does that. But each lab I worked for, we did it a little different.
Yeah,
Signature wire bending is what you called it, which is a
yeah,
great term.
yeah.
So yeah, I appreciate. Yeah, I guess I learned that from you from years ago, and I'd get a retainer from 5 years ago, and I knew that because we did that retainer when we worked for another lab. And we had a different wire bending signature in there. So you got to see the quality of other lab work
Yeah.
as you were an established. Now, how was your transition from? Where I assume you were a part-time assistant lab tech uh, at some point for a while.
Yes. During my employment with Dr. Yargates, he retired and he sold his laboratory to, no, his orthodontic
Practice.
practice to an orthodontist that lived in Northern California. And Dr. Anderson would fly down to Southern California in his little airplane twice a week, work the 2.5, 3 days a week, and then he'd go back to Northern California. And about that time, John and I had established our lab, and I think I got pregnant with our first baby, and it was time for me to retire from ortho assisting and concentrate on the lab and staying at home. And we had our lab in our house. So, like so many other lab owners,
Yeah.
you do both. You're a parent, a housekeeper, and a lab owner.
Hmm.
And we did that for 17 years.
Now, this was in the previous recording. You talked about getting up in the middle of the night with your baby and going, "Why should I go back to sleep?" And you would just go back you would go into the lab, right? Is that when this would happen?
That is correct. Second child um, came, and I had an employee that I had just hired, and she couldn't sleep at night. And because we were working at home and our laboratory was such that employees could just come and go, well, this young lady would start showing up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And she would sneak into the lab and start doing her lab work. And so that was a good opportunity for me because I was upstairs, you know, feeding one of my newborn, and I thought, well, why go back to bed? Why don't I just get dressed and go downstairs? And Doris and I would work side by side. So that was the beginning of starting work at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and we maintained that schedule until we closed the lab in '97.
Oh,
We were
wow.
on the job at 5 o'clock. Employees who wanted to come to work early came to work early, and all our daily lab work was done by 1:30 in the afternoon, at which point our delivery people would take that work from that finished day and deliver it around to all the doctors in the afternoon as they're picking up. And at 6 o'clock at night, tomorrow's work would come in. We would post it, get it ready, pour up impressions, get things trimmed. So at 5 o'clock next morning, all I had to do was start prepping the models and get everything ready for the technicians to start bending by 5:30, 6 o'clock.
So you almost had two shifts. You start at 5 and then end at 1 or 2, and then come back for the influx of cases
Yeah,
coming in.
after dinner or before dinner, since we worked at home, the couriers, the drivers would unload the lab work, get it ready, and after dinner, my kids were watching TV or doing homework or already in bed. We would put in a couple of hours before we would retire. So that's how we were able to sustain, um, you know, 75 retainers a day, appliances on a 24-hour turnaround. And we did 24-hour turnaround for 10 years.
So that was one of the things that you taught me about, and many of you that have talked to Priscilla on the phone know that she's a wealth of knowledge. That was an amazing system. You just had like 2 color pans or 3 color pans, and one day was one color, and the next day was one color, and you'd come in, you just work on it the next day, no matter what.
Correct. And
Right? Yeah.
if something was picked up on Monday and it needed to be delivered back to the orthodontic office on Tuesday afternoon, that lab case went in a red pan.
Oh, okay.
And so everything that was picked up on Monday was in a blue pan. And then that meant that it could go out tomorrow if it needed to, but the reds definitely had to. And 80% of all work went out within 24 hours.
That
But by labeling the lab pans, you could visually look at the color of the pans and go, these 6 or these 10 need to be first in, first out. First wire bent, first acrylic, first ground, first polished, and then be ready for Q&A before
so
2 o'clock.
were they broken up into bites? Sorry, my chickens are going crazy. I don't know if y'all can hear that.
I can't hear
Uh,
them.
okay, I hear them. So you were saying that there were. Was there just a big stack of wire bending, or did you just like do these 10 first and then do these 10?
The red would go on the top of the big
Okay,
stack.
okay.
And many times through the years, I might have 3 wire benders or 4 wire benders, and those stacks would be divvied up between those 4 technicians. You always had technicians that were more proficient and faster, and depending on what the rushes were, which technician got those.
Mm.
And so I manipulated that. I dictated that. And over time, sometimes I had 11 people work in the lab, and at the end I had 5. Three appliance technicians and 2 study model people. So all work had to be done from 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon by those 3 ortho technicians: wire bending, acrylicing, finishing, pumiceing, polishing, and Q&A, and packaging for the couriers. So we rotated.
Did you know of? You're the first ortho lab I've ever heard of that could do a 24-hour turnaround on a consistent basis. You don't see that anymore in our industry, I don't think. And there might be a lab out there that's doing that, but when you had started your lab, was there any other lab that you knew that was doing that?
No,
Being
when I started my lab in 71, um, we were doing things because we never knew what tomorrow would be. So if we did an appliance, we'd take it back to the doctor, and because we were beginners, they would all look at the work and say, yeah, that's sufficient. You can leave it. I had one pedodontist. Oh my God. He was the perfectionist of perfection. And on any given day, he could have rejected a lingual arch. So John would deliver it, take it, bring it back. We would redo it. He'd take it back, because we weren't making a living doing lab work. We were learning. And so you got to the point where you weren't going to take that thing back unless it was perfect. So we improved our skills, and then that meant that we became more proficient. And when we were doing the 50 or 70 retainers a day in a 24-hour turnaround, we knew what we were doing. We had it down pat, and no other labs were doing it. I mean, I had professional positioners in our area. We had PAR Orthodontic Laboratory in our area. In the Monrovia area, we had Roberts Orthodontic Laboratory. These were all founded, established laboratories with 3, 5, 10 years history, space maintainers. And we were the new kid on the block.
Right.
And we had to compete with that. But most of our feedback was we got stuff turned around. They were spending 7 days waiting for lab work.
Right. Yeah. It dumbfounds me. Y'all were able to pull this off. Well, y'all were doing 50 to 75. What was your employee count around that time?
Anywhere from 5 to 11.
Okay.
We did find that the more employees we had, the more they wanted to stand around and chat, and the slower they worked.
Oh, okay.
In 1991, when I moved the laboratory out of the house into our new laboratory in Yorba Linda, the commercial lab that we had designed, I moved 11 employees, 4 study model department people into our study model department, and 7 wire benders, acrylicers, and finishers. And once we moved into the new facility out of the house, within 2 months, a third of my employees quit. And then we had the 1991 recession hit.
Oh,
and things slowed down.
So it's this building, right?
That is correct.
Did y'all have that whole building or just a section of it?
No, it was a whole building. It was a 4,600 square foot warehouse building that we had cherried out, custom designed. Because remember, I had 11 employees, study model department, and working out of a 2-bedroom area in a house. That's the study model department. I had 2 trimmers, a motorized sanding unit, 2 whip mixes.
Yeah, see the whip
duplicator. And at one time I had 4 carvers in there doing study models.
And that's what the chair is over to the left, is where they would carve the...
Right, and it wraps around. There was counters on all 4 sides of the walls. And
wow.
In that study model department, we were capable of doing 100 study models a day.
Holy cow. And of course, that's like overlap, but you were spitting out, like, pour up one day, carve one day, finish another day kind of
Correct.
thing?
Yeah. because they had to dry in a special dryer overnight to extract all the moisture so they were ready for labeling and soaping the next day. But yes, 100 was the number we produced with an overlapping process.
What is that thing on the island in the middle? Is that?
It's an it it was a piece of equipment that my husband invented, and he took an end mill motor and mounted it on a stand with a table on it, and you could put the lower study model on it and crank the table up, and the end mill bit would, within like 16 seconds, cut out the tongue attachment on all the study models.
Oh,
So you
wow.
didn't have to do any carving. So every lower study model would be put on this end mill machine. You'd crank up the table, you would pass it, you'd crank it up to where it was at the height you wanted, and that took care of the tongue attachment on study models.
So you didn't have to spend time making tongues
Or
before you poured
removing
up.
tongues.
Or,
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
Carving by hand or a burr or whatever. This machine
Right.
would just.
And the whip mix jar, he developed a double jar with a handle on it, so he could pour 2 sets of study models up at one time.
That would spatulate.
Correct.
It was like a double the. Wow.
Double the volume, therefore whomever was pouring up impressions could pour 2 sets of impressions up at a time.
That is amazing. Yeah, it's great to have such a mechanical engineering mind available to you at the time.
Well,
You're like,
yeah.
I need this, make it happen.
Yeah, and he was brilliant at that. My partner in crime.
Yeah, I think you have I'm looking around like I have it near me. I think I bought an model holder from y'all that I believe y'all designed. That black one, is that?
Well, it was a soldering jig that Yates and Bird had, and we brought it in and used it as a model holder so we could bend on it, keep our hands ergonomically in the right position and
upright and
and
not hunched over.
Right. And for those of you who have seen me use that when I would wire bend, it was very, very efficient.
Yeah. Well, speaking of wire bender, we have this.
Well, and that was the appliance lab of the laboratory we had in Yorba Linda, and it had 12 stations for technicians.
Wow.
There's 3 pressure pots in the background. There's a 7-foot round table that currently, in this picture, it has 2 BioStars on that table. And when I closed the lab in 97, it had 3 BioStars that we would just go from one BioStar to another BioStar to another BioStar.
And just go around the circle and start one heating up, go to the next one, flip it over, go to the next one, take it out, and reload it, and that was genius. And I think you said your partner in crime, he made a manifold or for feeding pressure to all 3 of those at once.
Correct. Yeah.
And that I just love these. Ortho lab techs are the most ingenious people I know that can come up with. You need something done. You need to do it this way, and you just make something happen and use materials readily available for you. So that was, and you have just huge work counter behind all the technicians and in front. And
and there's a sink on the back wall you can't see. We had a stand-up pumice station that had two lathes for pumicing, a lathe for polishing. There was 3 grinding stations. So it was very proficient. We had overhead ventilation to extract all the fumes out. We had a shipping and receiving department that's not pictured here. We had plenty of space for laying out whatever kind of work we needed to lay out.
And so you built all this, and then you're your people quit.
Yeah, we had a big space and few people, but everybody picked up the slack.
And that's where you probably found out we are more productive with less people
Yes,
at that time.
yes, yeah.
That's amazing. Now, speaking of the BioStar, that's kind of where you got. Is this the lab where you kind of got started making your own products? You know, the genesis of JBC, in essence.
Um, yes. When we still had the lab in the house, I was doing BioStar. I was introduced to the BioStar machine from Great Lakes in 1972. That's when their material was only blue.
The blue. Yep.
And by 1977, um, I had done a lot of research and I found a company that could color my own plastic. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted it pink, not blue anymore. Great Lakes said it would never be pink. And
Because you were
so,
getting requests from doctors, right?
yes,
Can we have
they
something
wanted
else?
pink.
Because you
Yeah,
were making retainers on that BioStar,
correct.
and they were always blue, no matter
They
what.
were always blue. And, I took the training course at Great Lakes. Actually, they came out to the West Coast and did a class. And they said they were never going to have the pink. Well, I had found a company that could do the material in a pink color, but they couldn't put it together, meaning they couldn't make it thick. And
Mm.
that
Because
was called
it's
lamination,
yeah, it's different layers, right? And
different layers. And I was connected with these people, and they were old timers. And they said, no, because that material you want us to use comes polished, it's extruded in thin layers. Because it's polished, we can't squeeze it together
mm,
without incorporating air bubbles. And I said, well, okay, can you try it? And so they had some prototype material and they played around with it and they sent me samples, and there was an air bubble here and there. And then eventually, the gentleman's name was Herb, and he called me and he said, we've perfected it. We can do this for you now. And I said, all right. And I went ahead and contracted, and I had 2,000 pounds of pig material ordered and shipped to this laminator. And so this laminator laminated it in the different thicknesses that I wanted, 2.5 millimeter and 3 millimeter. And then we had to punch it in circles. And we purchased a big industrial die punch. And we established the first pig 3 3/4 inch BioStar material to be used in my lab only.
wow.
And so at that point in time in 76, I was doing pink BioStar appliances at, 40, 50 of those a day, and the balance in cold cure. And then about 7 months later, Great Lakes stumbled across my fabricator, and they took, as we know, the thermoform material for the BioStar and Great Lakes products to a higher level.
They started coming out with
The
zebra and
patterns,
yeah, and polka
yeah,
dot.
and correct. And that was based on, in 87, I exhibited in the Long Beach AAO. I took my laboratory there, and I had samples of BioStar thermoformed retainers that I had incorporated designs, patterns in from the floral industry, because the floral
Ah.
industry has, you've seen uh, the fluorescent paper ribbon, kind of, and some of it is cut. Well, I stumbled across that, and I laminated it between two thin layers of the clear BioStar material, brought it to the show, and within a year, Great Lakes had their patterns. So I feel as though I showed them the way. But I
You
was,
more of a kick in the butt, like you know.
well,
I
I
don't want to say me. You showed them the way. That's a more better way of saying that, for sure. Uh, oh, that is hilarious. So
And so about that time, then all the colors started coming out, the different acrylics, and it was a matter of the doctors were wanting them because they were going to the convention, seeing Great Lakes display and the colors that Great Lakes was offering them. I started getting requests for that. And okay, so I climbed on board. I purchased some of Great Lakes colors, Dentorum's dyes, and started putting together my monomer colors from Dentorum's colorants, and I improved on Great Lakes colors. It was something I needed to do for me because I did like the way their stuff behaved or looked, and that's where I got into the chemistry, the formulating, and playing around with colorants and different acrylics for different working properties. And that's how the JBC color line got started because I wanted it
yeah,
for my own lab.
so y'all pretty much, uh, iron sharpens iron. You push them, and then they push you, and you just kind of made life better for everybody, just by
Well, that wasn't my intention, but it was for what we wanted in the lab. And then other laboratories started seeing our colors here and there. And we were getting requests for where are you getting your colors? And that is when I found out that what I was doing for my own lab, I had to go to the FDA.
I was going to
And
ask about the FDA because that was a process.
it was a process. And so it was, holy crap, now what do I do? Then I had to learn how you present that to the FDA. I interviewed a couple of consulting companies that would have done it for me, but I would have had to have shown them what I was doing, and then they would just put it down on paper. Plus, charge me a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I did my due diligence. I did a lot of investigating, conversations with people within the FDA, and it took me 2 years to provide my what you call the 510K notification to the Food and Drug Administration, asking them to tweak the formulas of the acrylics used in the dental industry by adding color that had never been added before. And so after 2 years of putting that report together, submitting it to the FDA, if it came back, it took them 4 months to review it, and they came back and they told me that they had accepted it. They would allow me to move forward to market, manufacture, and sell my acrylics. And that at the time, the gentleman I spoke with, he was an auditor, but he was also a PhD in dental science, in dentistry. And he said in his years with the FDA, it was the finest submission he'd ever seen.
And it was a thick.
Yeah, it was a 3-inch binder in triplicate.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that I couldn't imagine all the. So, like, going into that a little bit, like, you had to find dyes, colorants, that were already in the food industry or outside. How do you find all these colors that you?
Well, there's specific colorants that can only be used in the monomers,
Mhm.
and those are called solvent dyes, and they dissolve, giving the clear monomer a clear color. And there's a gazillion of those dyes, but not all of them carry the components that would be allowed by the FDA. And so I got to speak with chemists within dye manufacturing companies, and they kind of led me down a path and many samples, play with many different samples to where the colors were either I liked them, did like them, or I tweaked them. And same thing with the powders, different powders. The acrylic powder, you could only use a specific pigment in them. And then those pigments could only are only approved by the FDA based on the chemistry of those pigments. So some colors were already being used in the cosmetic industry, and about 60% of the colorants that I introduced had never been used in cosmetics or food and drug. So that is the tricky part of my submission, was I had to provide the Food and Drug Administration with information that would tell them that my dyes that were going to be put in the acrylics would not leach out of
So
the
you had to
acrylic.
provide proof of that, and studies and research, and
Correct. And so by now, I had become very good friends with the chemist in one of the dye houses. And the FDA auditor had told me what to look for or what to ask for. So I took that information, went back to my chemist and said, I need the molecular structures for all the pigments. He said, well, we can't give you that. That's proprietary.
Ooh.
And I said, well, it's just going to be for an FDA reporting. It's going to go no further than into the FDA's archives. And he said, okay, I'll do that. The auditor in the FDA said that they were looking for a specific molecular structure, and they could tell by looking at the structure of the molecule of the dyes and pigments if it would leach out. And if none of those dyes that I was asking to use were going to be a biocompatible, create a biocompatibility issue, that I couldn't use it. It just so happened that everything cleared. I did not have to do biocompatibility testing because of the molecular structures were all going to be bound and terminated inside the acrylic. So with that, that's how I got my clearance to tweak, add specific new colors totally into what was grandfathered in 1976.
Oh, okay.
And so when my submission went in, I changed the rules because I asked different questions and got permission to do what I did.
Yeah, the first.
So
you were not afraid to ask.
Right. So I was the new kid on the block that did it right my first time out, whereas now some of the other acrylic companies are finding that their stuff doesn't clear because that permission was never asked.
Because you were the first FDA approved for orthodontic acrylics using, grandfathered.
Outside of grandfathered dyes and pigments, yes.
Because I think nothing compares to your colors. I know there are some labs that have their favorites, and you formulated some certain colors just for certain labs, and it's neat to see the genesis of all these different colors that came from.
And there's about 15 more colors of monomers that are not displayed there, that, yes, I have formulated proprietarily wise for other laboratories using the already approved JBC pigments. But there's just too many to market them all, and I just kept it with the existing color spectrum that everybody knows right now.
Right. Yeah. And the popular, you were talking about, these are different pigments that go into the powders.
Yes.
And I remember a long time ago you were telling me, like, there's only one blue pigment, and you have to use it in certain ways to achieve all these other blue colors that you have, which is amazing to see what goes on in the background of your business back there. And I'm sure you have proprietary formulations, locked in a safe somewhere, like the secret Coca-Cola recipe or the KFC ingredients.
Yeah. So true. So true.
So give me a glimpse of that. When you go to mix a new batch of royal blue or something like that, how does that process go for you?
It's a recipe.
Okay.
It is written down like a chocolate chip recipe. So certain amount of flour, certain amount of sugar, certain amount of baking soda. So every color has a recipe, and that recipe does not change from one batch at a time. And the colorants are all made in 3-pound batches,
Oh,
and we have a very specific piece of equipment that each batch of powder goes into with the different pigments, and it mills, so the colorants are imparted onto the bead resin, kind of like a mortar and pestle.
okay. Yeah.
So it has a time frame that it takes to do that imparting of the colorant onto the bead resin. And when the timer is up, you dump it or you open it, you verify against a control color sample that is handy. And if it matches, it it is emptied out
Passes.
and goes into the batch. And then another batch goes on. And so, we make anywhere from 9 pounds to 45 pounds at a time. And then from that backup bulk storage, we down pack the 4 ounce, the 8 ounce, the 16-ounce containers, depending on what is needed and how it's sold.
So, are there some labs out there that, hey, a give me your 3 pound bag of, not box of certain color, and you just
Well,
gotta mix it just for them and ship it out.
there are a couple of colors that there's a batch size, so it's 3 pounds. If I custom do a color, it's a 3-pound batch.
Oh, okay. You gotta
So if
order
you
the 3 pound batch.
That's correct, and they have to commit to that. They don't have to buy it, but they commit to me doing the R&D to get the color, to get it matched. We go back and forth until they approve the color, and my recipe is substantial, and then that gets documented and gets filed with all the other colors. And then if we have to redo a batch, we just pull out the recipe card and do another 3-pound batch.
No, that's that's
And
awesome.
and same thing for the monomers. Some of these 510K appliances, there's Vivos, there's the Oasis, there's several others that have specific proprietary colorants that those 510K holders come to me, and I formulate a color they want as their signature color. And that is the color they spec out in their FDA filing. And then any laboratory that's going to have the franchise for manufacturing that appliance, whether it be in Canada or Northeast, they have to use that particular brand and color
Right.
in that appliance.
I believe a lot of labs are learning about this FDA. As a 510K, their aligners, whatever, they have to use the same printer, the same resin, the same
Right.
every single time. So
Right.
these appliances, you have to use this JBC FDA cleared resin to construct this appliance for it
Correct.
to be FDA approved appliance. That Did you ever think you'd be at this point working with uh, being a manufacturer? Well, hey, let's go back. I think I wrote some notes here. In '98, you moved to Las Vegas,
I did.
and you already had JBC up and going at that time.
It was just starting to. Yes, we had received our FDA approval. had been in the lab 27 years and wanted to sell the laboratory from California in that
Hmm.
nice, beautiful pink facility.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen. So in 97, I closed the doors and walked away. Moved, all my lab equipment to Nevada. We were going to do the JBC thing. We had asked all our doctors to follow us to Nevada. I would still provide a 2-day turnaround, 3-day turnaround instead of 2-day or 24-hour. And I got to Nevada, got all set up, and I didn't have any laboratory. No, I did not have any orthodontist follow me. So we're sitting in Nevada with a small lab set up, no income, and kind of had to go to the local orthodontist and see if I could, solicit lab work there to offset not having the big Southern California lab. And that didn't happen. So it was a matter of a couple of years before we kind of started more lab work and still trying to launch JBC nationally. And it was a slow go because a lot of people said, "Oh, we've already got colors. We already have color charts.
Hmm. Hmm.
We now we don't need any more colors." And I don't know. It just slowly became viable, and it took about 10 years for JBC to earn its income, start making me some money
Right. Yeah. To
to
replace
live
it.
on, to live
Yeah.
on. But that was okay.
Trial by fire. You jumped in there. Now you even said you had in a previous recording that like a doctor did a doctor cry when you said you were leaving?
Yes, yes. A lot of the orthodontic doctors that I was doing work for, many of them had already had 22, 25 years. Some had
Mm.
already had 15, 17 years. I mean, a lot of them were brand new right out of college. After 10 years, I'd done all their study models for the board, and it was a fine-tuned machine. We picked up work, we delivered it back. They never had issues. They knew when to expect the lab work. Every one of them, if they had a particular case, they would call me. We would consult. Many times I'd go to the office and help them seat it because they wanted me to be a part of seating in a very specially designed appliance.
Mm.
So we had a good relationship. Yes, they did not want to lose my laboratory services. And I had to cry. I said, "Look, you are all I know. What am I
Hmm.
going to do?" I said, "Well, just, send your work to Nevada."
I just need one more
Excuse me.
day.
Yes. And so over time, what had happened was, um, and I think it was God looking out after me because it was a brilliant marketing strategy. I had a laboratory. I had my original color card that only had 62 colors on it out in every dental practice that I was doing work for. When I closed the door, those colors went away.
Oh, yes.
And those doctors didn't have a lab. So they had to go out to Great Lakes, PAR. Great Lakes might have already left at that time. I think they only had a 3-year stint in in Southern California. They couldn't compete with me.
Oh, so I didn't realize uh, uh they
They had a
started East
West
Coast.
Coast.
They had a
They had a
West Coast
West Coast.
division.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That I think they were there 3 years, and then they closed their doors. But there's
You had
about
your
yeah,
color card in all these offices when you left.
correct, right.
Yeah.
And
Not this
so
one, but a color
right,
card with beautiful
yeah,
colors in it.
the smaller one. So when I left Southern California, these doctors, if they didn't follow me to Nevada, they had to go out to the local labs. And there was at least, I would say, 10 local laboratories that absorbed my accounts, absorbed the volume of work that I was doing. And the doctor said, well, we need those colors. I don't know where you're going to get those colors, but
Just make it happen.
we want those colors. So about 4 months after we moved, we started getting phone calls from the local laboratories, all of which knew who my laboratory was, but didn't know anything about JBC because they didn't carry the same name. So then I got to talk with these new lab people that were now searching my colors. And then a couple of them said, what the hell did you do to us? You were there, you left, and now we have to absorb your volume. Two of them said, I couldn't absorb your volume. It was just me.
Right. I've been into that situation before.
And then the colors, and the doctors say, if you don't get these colors, you don't do my work.
Wow.
So that was how JBC started generating more and more business, because now all the labs in Southern California needed to resource the colors that I was using to fabricate the appliances for my stuff. Now they needed to duplicate those colors. So it was, unbeknown to me, a fantastic strategy. Just tickle everybody with the product and then move away, and there's no more products, and then it's focused back to you.
Yeah, you created your own problem, but then you had the solution to the problem you created.
Yeah.
I think governments do that.
Okay.
Well, so let's talk about the formulation. You mentioned before, you made it where you liked it, how it handled and how it set up and stuff like that. Were you getting feedback from these other labs that had to start using your colors, probably very reluctantly at first because they were used to the way their acrylics handled, uh, and they found out you've reformulated it?
Yes. Some of the pushback was, well, I already have color chips. I don't want to do color chips. Color chips are time consuming and product expensive. You have to buy product in order to make a color chip.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I initially started doing is sending out samples and put
Of
samples.
color chips?
No, powder and liquid.
Oh, okay, okay.
So I think the big push was for JBC. I think I attended a 2001 NADL meeting. It was in Las Vegas. We had already moved to Las Vegas. So it was an easy, pack stuff up, take it to the convention, be there. And that's where Marcia Melton came by. A couple other lab people came by because they were doing their CDT credits. And she picked up some of my samples. She took them home. She played with them. She called me up and she said, oh my God, these are great colors, and they work different. And I think that's when Marcia reached out to you, maybe a little while later. And she was using all TP's colors at the time, and she didn't like them as much. But I had given out a lot of samples at the NADL. Then I think 2 years later, when Katrina hit Louisiana, the AA was supposed to be in Louisiana, New Orleans, and it got switched like in 6 weeks to Nevada. So I exhibited JBC for the first time in an AAO convention, and it took off there.
Oh, wow.
Labs came by, they saw the stuff. I gave out samples. I gave samples to orthodontic assistants that were with their doctors. Those samples found their way in the hands of their laboratory, whether it be in Georgia or New Hampshire, wherever it was. And it seemed as if everybody liked They liked the colors and they liked the way it behaved.
That that's what I've realized, and I saw it again when I started using yours in my lab, and I merged my lab with another lab. And part of the stipulation was you got to use these colors, because my doctors are used to those colors and
Yeah.
they have the color chart, and so they reluctantly ordered them. And there were a little bit of complaints. It's like it gels different. It doesn't, you don't get the wet beach sand stage. It gels, and then he started liking it and started promoting it, and it was just like a little training difference, how it handles, because he was very precise in his acrylic work, and so I got to see that firsthand. That was neat to see, because I had already gotten used to it. Now, if I had
Yeah.
to use an old powder from another company, I'd be like, oh, this is so weird. It acts so weird. But but in 2013, I have it written down here. You came to Texas,
Yes.
from Nevada to Texas, and you I believe you combined workplace with your daughter. Is that right?
Well, we were headed for Texas. She wanted to move her businesses from Nevada to Texas. So yes, she built a metal building that would house her stuff, and with the anticipation that I didn't need much space, and so she incorporated a little portion of her building and allocated it to me. And when I moved, we loaded everything up. I think I have 3,200 square feet. My office, I'm sitting here with my warehouse.
Mm.
It's so one side of the room is my office and, 3 computers and desks. And on that side is, 22-foot pallet racks with, boxes, cardboard, dies. And then I have 2 clean rooms in back, one for the monomers that we manufacture the
Mm.
monomers in, which is an explosion proof, um, you know,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
for because monomers can be very volatile. And
So you
then,
mix in different rooms,
oh yeah,
which makes sense because they chemically react. So if you had a speck of powder in the monomer room, you could set up all your monomer.
yes, that is yes. So we do have that; they're separated, and so we're on the ranch, on my daughter's ranch. Her building, she has 2 buildings now. Both are, you know, I don't know, 30,000 square feet each, 25 feet tall,
Wow. Wow.
and they do all their distribution worldwide from here. And I get to share in that little part of her world also.
Well, I'm glad you're in Texas because that I get my orders the next day on
Yeah,
ground, which
yeah,
is so y'all have a UPS guy that comes, picks up daily her stuff
yes,
and your stuff,
yes.
and now that you're just a manufacturing in little Fredericksburg, Texas, but the hub is San Antonio, I guess, is the
Um,
biggest town
uh,
next to you.
yeah, it goes to Kerrville, which is 23 miles
Oh,
away,
that's
and
it.
then from Kerrville it goes into San Antonio.
So what about picking? So you develop your own um, acrylic line. You started incorporating other supplies.
Yes,
So like 99% of my supplies come from you because it's just easier to order. Screws and flux and solder and wire. So we didn't even I think in the last recording we talked about wire and you developing your own type of wire. So that's another thing you can add to your things that you've developed. Pink disc and your acrylic and wire. What else?
well, the bluegrass beads.
The bluegrass beads. Yes.
Right now they're still kind of on hold because, I'm limited on staff. And I have two wonderful ladies now working for me that look like are going to give me the opportunity to get back into remanufacturing those bluegrass beads. So the bluegrass beads and how I did it and how I brought them to market, I guess, is synonymous to what Priscilla does every now and then.
Yeah.
Um, the, I guess, that easy form that hasn't quite launched yet for
For the
fabricating the
splint.
splints, that has something that is on the back burner. Um, we all know the other thing, that the target on my back.
Right. Well, and here's, as we integrate you being in Texas, you came here to the DLAT. Oh, I don't know when, 2012 or something like that,
I
through
I think it was
Marcia.
2009
Maybe, yeah, maybe
and
so.
then 10.
And like this picture was 2012,
Okay.
and you're doing your splint course with your silicone splint molds, uh, which I still like to use to this day, when I need something to you know if it's gonna be thick, if I know it's gonna be thick, use that. I'll get way less bubbles
Yeah.
than doing it by hand. But like I said, I have all these pictures of us. There's uh, Marcia, who introduced me to you, and this is your splint course you did for us, or hands-on splint course. Uh,
Okay, we'll get this taken care of. We will get this up for you today.
so anyway, it's always fun to go back and see all these. But
Yeah.
sorry, I went on a.
Well, that's okay.
I forgot what we were talking about now, but yeah, you started coming to the DLAT because Marcia was like, "Hey, get Priscilla," and then with the president of the DLAT at the time was Ernie, who had an ortho lab in San Antonio, and he wanted you to come down also. So that worked out great, and that was the genesis of the uh, ortho meetings that we have every year at the DLAT.
Yeah, when I knew I was coming to Texas to the DLAT, that I would put it out um, as flyers in the boxes that I was shipping out, phone conversations with people. Through the course of exposing myself to lab owners, we became friendly, and most everybody said, if there's ever a meeting that you're going to be to, Priscilla, I want to come. We need to do a meet and greet. We need to start talking and sharing. And so over the years, that started to be the consensus. The DLAT invited me. I think the second year I went, I had two people, one from Southern California, come, and another one from Florida. Juan still comes every
Juan,
year.
yeah, yeah.
So those two people came just to see Priscilla,
Mm-hmm.
and what I did, and to be a part of this DLAT meeting. And then the next year, and the next year, and it slowly grew from outside of Texas to, or from inside of Texas to outside of Texas. And last year, gosh, we had them from Canada again,
Mm-hmm.
and from all over.
And this has grown. Your famous ortho design course, ortho acrylic course. I have another picture. I don't know if it's going to show up here, but you're just absolutely surrounded by 30 or 20 to 30 people that have come to the conference just for the ortho courses and come to see your hands-on acrylic course.
It's always fun because what I do is different, and it's hard to explain to somebody what I do until you stand before me and watch how I play around with the acrylic, and it's fun.
I know personally, I never knew you could do things like that with acrylic. Using a mixture of salt and pepper, and then pre-mix, and then making your design with a pre-mix. I couldn't even imagine what your acrylic department setup looked like while y'all were doing 50 of these, and I'm sure a lot of more designs too that y'all were doing, and you really perfected it then.
Yeah, the designs were always done at the last. They were the last appliances to be done because they were more time consuming. But you just figure out what that workflow is, and make it work.
Yeah, yeah. And sorry, my rooster's crowing at night, but the in getting into the organization, I'm trying to get us from where you began, where you're at now, and now we talk about the organization and kind of the start of it here in Texas with the AOLP, and you got Chris Gajewski to come speak.
He wanted to come, and he came, and he saw, and then that's when he got really invigorated, and he said, we have to organize. And I think the following year he went and he applied for a 501c3. He wanted to incorporate, and he named it the ALOP, the Association of Orthodontic Laboratory Professionals. And Chris was the self-elected or by proxy, because he started it, was a president. And that was the initial, official organization built under the DLAT for orthodontic laboratory lab techs and professionals ever. And Chris,
there's Chris right there in the blue shirt.
And we had a board of directors, and we had, meetings, and we were trying to get things launched, and there was things that entered in the expeditiousness of filing paperwork and whatever. And then Lance and a few other people stepped up because they were in the background doing the Leo Lab thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought that was a good thing, but they wanted it all to be inclusive with everybody.
Right.
So it merged and become the Orthodontic Resource Group. And we have a new brand, we have a new logo, and we have all the other wonderful things that Chris so much wanted in the very beginning as well. And it's all good. We just need more people to be able to be willing to take the time and come join us on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Texas.
Yeah. With that being said, here's Juan. I found the back of Juan's head that had been coming ever since.
He comes every year.
Yeah, he comes every year. Yep. And then there's Tiffany, who the current president is.
Yeah.
This was one of her first meetings here.
It was.
And then there's Grace from California. There's Chris, and there's Scott, who owns a large lab here in the Metroplex.
And then the gentleman with his arms crossed, that's Lee LaCasey from Florida.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And this gentleman back here is a dentist. He comes every year, him and another guy. They come every year, and they're a hoot. They rather come to the lab meetings, the dental lab meetings, than their dentist meetings to get their credits. So, these are all just some pictures that I pulled up real quick. There's Marsha, who made the introductions. There's McGrath, I believe, who's San Antonio also. And then there's Chris.
Donnie McGrath.
And trying to think who else I see back there. There's Tiffany doing some hands-on. We did a lot of hands-on at the time. There's, if y'all know Gary Morgan from Safely,
wife.
That's his wife.
Yeah.
And there's Linda, who was Linda. She had Ortho, right?
Yes, she did.
Austin.
Yes.
She was past president of DLAT. Dossing. Yeah.
Yeah, Dossing.
So I know I'm getting off the subject here, but yeah, like you were saying, it was almost like a coming together of what DLAT was doing, Leo Labs was doing with Lance, and then Don Inman with WKE. It was
Yes.
we finally put everything under the same umbrella, and we owe a lot of it to Priscilla here. That was just because she came to our DLAT meeting, people started going, I want to go see Priscilla. I've talked to her for years on the phone. I've never seen her, never met her, but I want to meet her. And that started everybody coming. Uh, I mean, we've had people from Australia come,
Hmm.
uh, Canada, all over the place. We had Socrates from Greece come and teach class.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so we've had them all over the place. So it's we're really in a good place right now, and I think we're in a new era of sharing information, and we can owe a lot of that to digital because a lot of us didn't know what we were doing. A lot of the big labs got their $100,000 printer first, and were telling us the good and the bad things about it. We had Michael Wright come from ODL and show us his EasyRx software and and share what they were doing as far as digital, and so it started trickling down, and we just started helping each other out. And when you come to one of these meetings, it's such a good friendship to meet people and fellowship with people who are struggling like you are. So I'm going to put that down there. There's the save the date for next year. Come see Priscilla and take her course. We now have our own OrthoLab Alley exhibit hall, so you're an exhibitor there as an ORG sponsor, and that's amazing to see.
It's been a very heartwarming journey, and I just love to see everybody there talking to each other, going getting a drink, whether it be Coke or beer or wine. Some go play, golf on that Thursday afternoon. It's just great. It's just great.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you being in the middle of that has helped that so much. So big thank you for what you've done. Here's a picture of us going out one of those nights. Me and Chris,
That's right.
and
Denise and Judy.
yeah, Janice and Judy, who are also lab owners from Texas, and Chris is from Pennsylvania, so he was flying in. So lot of players in this, but I think we're at a good point. So where we're at, we all got the same problems. Well, with that being said, let me end this before as you know, Priscilla, you and I could talk forever on the phone and and get things. But she is a sponsor of ORG. This is her website, jbcandcompany.com. There's a phone number on here also up in the upper right corner if you need to call and talk to her. But she pretty much has everything you need for your ortho lab. So this is kind of a personal plug for her and her company. And Priscilla, thank you for joining us on the podcast. Long time coming.
Yes, Cade, thank you. I appreciate it. It's always heartfelt to be in your company.
Yeah, or awkward. All right. With that being said, we're going to see y'all next week. Thank you for being patient with us. We're all experiencing the back to school rush this week, so we
Yeah.
skipped a week on
And the heat.
posting. And the heat, yeah.
And the heat.
And so we pre-recorded this because I didn't know how the heat was going to affect our internets here in Texas. So hope y'all enjoy this. Put some comments down below. We'll try to answer them as you put them down there. But until next time, I hope everybody has a safe summer, and we'll see y'all next week. So see y'all later.